know that some of these gods or creators, when there's a sacrifice done, sometimes there's also stories and legends about Fen'Harel working or helping specific people, or even becoming the slave of other creators. Did Corypheus maybe call on to Fen'Harel for this? Was Fen'Harel tied to Corypheus somehow? Could it have gone way back to even the first blight? Could Fen'Harel have been to blame for the first blight? And maybe now Fen'Harel thought he was going to get his revenge for it, because it was definitely not what he wanted. And if you hear Solace talk about the blight, he's very passionate about it. Like when you go after Adamant with the Grey Wardens, he's like, how could you have like recruited them? Like they're dangerous and this and that. And he talks about the blight, and he's like, that was, you know, he it sounds like there's more there, like there's baggage on his shoulder when it comes to the blight. Now that's just a really like a far-fetched theory that's not completely formed yet in my head, but I was like, what if Fen'Harel has known Corypheus since the beginning, since the first blight? Back then he didn't know what was going to happen, because this was the first time that it was going to happen. So then the blight happens and he's like, oh my god, that was not good. And now he must have been like, he's gonna die. This fool's gonna die, and my tie to him or whatever ends. This is where it ends. But it didn't turn out like that. I don't know if that's maybe that's why he was working with Corypheus, but it seems like there was this. It seems like Corypheus, if this being at the end of Masked Empire is Corypheus, he had some kind of grasp on Fen'Harel, whether it was through some kind of ritual, I don't know, but Fen'Harel didn't do what he wanted. He didn't get the access to the Illuvions, which also makes me think that this is Corypheus, because that's what Corypheus wanted. He also wanted access to the Illuvions in order to get into that the crossroads that Morrigan speaks of, and slip into the Fade physically. But then he acquires Solas's orb, Fen'Harel's orb, and he's like, boom, I got this. I'll use this. I don't have the passphrase for the Illuvions, so I'll use this. So the breach happens. It all goes to hell because of the Inquisitor, and he's like, I'm gonna go back to plan B. I'm gonna try to access those damn Illuvions. That fails. So it all seems to tie to Corypheus, that this being is Corypheus. Another thing that I kind of found a correlation between Felasan and Solace was how Solace talks about Halam Shiral. He says something like, I forgot how exciting court intrigue was. And the Inquisitor's like, oh, you've been at court? And then Solace kind of like tries to like push it off. He's like, oh, no, well, and he kind of like changes like his direction about it, how he says it. And I was like, Felasan went to court. He went to Halam Shiral. He approached Empress Celine with Briala. So he knows what that's like. He's seen the game, and Sola speaks of the game as if he had witnessed it firsthand, and he speaks of Briala as if he has a lot of respect for her, as if he knew her, and the Inquisitor's like, he says something like, Briala is a good I forgot exactly how he says it in Dragon Age Inquisition, but pretty much saying that Briala is gonna lead the elves for something good or something like that. And the Inquisitor's like, you think so? You kind of like, how would you know? How do you know? Do you? I got that. I was like, the Inquisitor must be thinking, how does he know? Like, how does he know Briala? He doesn't even know her. Also, Felasan always knew that there was something bigger coming. He told Imshile there's something bigger coming. It must have been Corypheus and the Breach. So Felasan knew that something big was coming. And so it's like, how did he know? How did he know that there was something big coming? It was because he was linked with Corypheus. He knew his plans. And I think Felasan or the Fen'Harel, again, it was the means that would lead to his end, but he was tricked. He has been tricked a few times. And another time that he was tricked is, I think, at the end of Dragon Age Inquisition, when he goes to see Flemeth. Before you see Solace, you see Flemeth doing something with an Illuvion. And you're like, okay, I don't get it. I thought she was just activating it or something. But if you look at it, she's sending something through the Illuvion. You could see that this light is going through the Illuvion. And I was like, oh my God. She knew Solace was coming. She said, I knew you would come. She tells Fen'Harel. So she was like, this guy's gonna come. She knew about the orb. She knew that this is the trickster. Even though he wants a good future for his people, his means are usually very backstabby. They'll affect one person while they benefit another. So Mythal / Flemeth must have been like, I need some leeway. Like I need to like protect myself somehow. So what I think happens at the end of Dragon Age Inquisition, when Solace comes in, he's like, oh, but the people, I should be the one that pays the price. And Flemeth hugs him and all that, and he's like, oh. And then he looks at her, and this thing happens, and the essence inside Flemeth goes into Solace. And it's like, did Solace just snatch Mythal away from her? Or did Mythal possess Solace? So it's like, who was possessing who? I think Solace snatched Mythal away from Flemeth because of the way that Flemeth looks. She's like, she gasps, and she's left petrified. So if you did the dark ritual and Kieran, you have Kieran, there's a part where Kieran and Flemeth are in the Fade, I believe. That I didn't have this, but I saw it. I found it on YouTube because I wanted to see what was being said. So Flemeth wants this possession there. She wants the old god spirit within Kieran. So when that is happening, where you see the light going into Kieran and or whatever, it's very tranquil. It's very peaceful. Like Flemeth is just sitting there. And then when Flemeth takes away whatever is in Kieran, I guess whatever she was giving to him, and then she takes it back, it's very peaceful. And he's all, no more nightmares, and she's like, no more nightmares or whatever. So you get the idea. When this is happening, this transferring of essences, it should be, if it's accepted by the other person, it should be very tranquil. It should just happen. But with Solace, it wasn't like that. It was completely different from what was going on with Kieran and Flemeth. It was like you snatched out of her, and Flemeth was so caught. She looked like she was caught off guard. She was petrified, and she's just left there as like a stump. So I was like, Solace yanked Mythal out of Flemeth, but Flemeth already knew this. I think Flemeth was like, man, he's coming for me because he is gonna try. He's already failed so many times. So what other strong power could he do or could he use? He's gotta be thinking, I need to get Mythal. Like Mythal is the last power that I could seek. So Flemeth, what I think she was pushing through the Illuvion was a piece of Mythal, because that light is the same color that is pulled out of her into Solace. That she's pushing through the Illuvion. It's the same color. It's the same light. So I was like, she must have split her essences. I think Flemeth put whatever she could of Mythal through the Alluvion, probably back into Uthenera for her to heal Mythal. And Solas maybe just took a little piece of Mythal or whatever, or maybe just Flemeth's essence. I don't know, but Solas did not get the full essence of Mythal. That's my theory, because it looks like Flemeth is letting Mythal go into the Alluvion. And after you beat the game, if you go to Valrayo, an elven servant can be heard saying that they are having dreams of a woman saying that she's Mythal. Mythal must have survived. What Flemeth did, Mythal must have survived. He does not have the full essence of Mythal. So I think she only has a piece of her. And Mythal lives in Uthenera right now. And that's why this elven servant is having dreams of Mythal. I think, again, Fen'Harel was tricked by Flemeth.
I am sorry as well, old friend.
When he was trying to trick her. Because he was all like, oh, but the people, they need me. And then he just yanks Mythal out. But she was already, she had prepared herself before he came, because she was like, I knew you would come. So whatever comes in the next Dragon Age most likely will be a being of Fen'Harel and maybe Mythal, or something like that. Some kind of powerful being that has been united by two godlike figures, but not fully. So I think Mythal is going to, maybe even in the next game, Mythal is going to possess the main character. I don't know. That would be interesting. Another thing that is very, 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 very interesting to me was the Nightmare and Solas. During the Here Lies the Abyss, I think that's the name of the quest, with Hawk, the Nightmare tells each character, he says something about their fear and he plays on it and he tries to get them to freak out. What he says to Solas is a mystery, because it's in Elven and the subtitles are in Elven as well. It's not translated. So BioWare left it to us to translate it, and it's very hard to translate because we only have what words mean and not what they mean in a sentence, because grammar could change a word's meaning. You can't just literally translate a sentence directly into English. I've come up with so many translations and there's still more. I don't doubt it. So this is what the Nightmare says, and this is what Solas responds.
Döth ma herelan, ma banal inasalin, marsolas ina martin.
Bonal nadas.
Dirth means to tell or to speak, and mostly usually referring to a secret. Ma means my, mine, or you, and Harelan means trickster or traitor. Banal means nothing, not, or no. Enasaline means victory. Mar, I don't know what Mar means. I couldn't find it, but I'm thinking, especially with the way that I'm translating it, it most likely means your or from. The Nightmare is speaking in Elven, so when he says Solas, he is most likely referring to the actual word and not the name. Solas means pride or to stand tall. Ena means appear or to emerge. And Din means not, isn't, or the dead. So there's different ways of saying it, Din, but it usually means the dead. So here are my translations. Even though it says to tell or to speak, like a secret, there are other words that fit that as well. Maybe admit it. He says, admit it, trickster, you failed. Because by saying ma banal and Enasaline is victory. Banal is nothing or not or no. So that must be directly translated it must be you not victory, or you are not victorious. So I was like, what's another way of saying that? You're not victorious. You failed. So admit it, trickster, you failed. You stand tall and for nothing. Or, admit it, trickster, you failed. You appear proud, but you are not. Speak, you trickster, you are not victorious. You stand tall and for nothing. Speak, you trickster, you failed. Your pride will lead to your death. Speak, you trickster, you failed. Your pride comes from your dead. And then Solace says, Banal nadas. Banal, again, nothing, not, or no. And nadas means inevitable or must. So what Solace might be saying is it isn't inevitable, or maybe nothing is inevitable. Any one of these translations, like let's say, speak, you trickster, you failed, your pride will lead to your death. And then Solas says nothing is inevitable. So that kind of makes sense. Or or your pride comes from your dead, nothing is inevitable. Kind of like saying, I can't prevent that. But the pretty much with what I think the nightmare is trying to tell Solas is you failed. You thought you were gonna get something out of what you did, giving the orb to Corypheus, but you failed. You were pretty much tricked. And then he says, your pride comes or leads to death. That's all that Fen'Harel has ever done, is his pride, either to rule the Fade, or who knows what his motivations are, what he wants. Does he really want this world and the Fade to be one? Because that's pretty much what Solas is always talking about in Dragon Age Inquisition, and he talks about it passionately. Him wanting that is his pride, and him always thinking that he's gonna trick everyone into what his means, that he's gonna use everyone. He ends up failing, and people end up dying because of him. So that's pretty much, I think, what the nightmare is telling him. And we know that Solas, through Cole, through banter between Cole and Solas, it's very confusing, but if you stop and just analyze what they're saying, it makes sense. Cole is usually talking to Solas about his past, saying, so much death, and he's saying, but your intentions were good and this and that. Solas tells Cole that, he does have a lot of regret, and he does feel a lot of guilt, and that, things, he didn't want certain things to turn out the way they did. And even the Inquisitor at one point says, what is he talking about? He tells Solas, what is he talking about? And Solas says, a mistake. So a lot of those times, it's not clear what Cole is telling him about. Like, what is he talking about? What part of history is he talking about? Is he talking about when he locked the creators and the Forgotten Ones in their own realms and pretty much left the elven people alone without their gods or without their creators? And they ended up destroying themselves anyways, killing death because of what he did, even though his intentions were good, even though he didn't mean for that to happen. It happened. Is Cole talking about that mistake? Or is he talking about, like I said, possibly the Blight, if that theory even goes anywhere? That's like a floating theory in my mind, where maybe Fen'Harel was linked to Corypheus and the first Blight. I don't know. There was a lot of deaths there. That Blight was the longest Blight. It lasted about 100 years. So it's like, is that a mistake he's talking about? Or is it just the mistake of the breach? This recent one, where he didn't know that this was going to happen. So many deaths. And so many deaths keep happening, and now Fen'Harel has to put it right. That's why he's part of the Inquisition, because he's like, I have to do something. This is my fault. When I started to see the words that he was using, like trickster, and I was like, oh my God, he's already right there. Already before the end of the game, he's already saying, this is Fen'Harel, this is the trickster. A little side note was at the end of Dragon Age Inquisition, where Flemeth and Solas are standing, there's two statues behind them, and one of them is of a wolf, and the other one is of something that looks like a dragon, like with its head down like that. And some statues of Mythal are seen to have like wings. I don't know if maybe the representation of Mythal is a dragon, or what, but it must have been a statue of Mythal and the Dread Wolf. And if you look at the location, it looks a lot like the altar of Mythal. But the thing is that there wasn't an alluvion there. So is this a representation of that altar in the Fade? There was only a statue of Mythal there when you went with the Inquisitor. But there is those two statues of the Dread Wolf. At least that's what I think it is, because it's a wolf. And what I believe is Mythal. Why those two are depicted together, I don't know. Like, why would those two statues be together? Abelos does say that Fen'Harel did not kill Mythal, so that we know that didn't happen. And Flemeth does call Fen'Harel old friend, so their relationship must have been good. Another thing that I thought was interesting was, I was like, if Corypheus ever sees Solace, does he know who he is? Like, will he be like, oh, you're the one that gave me the freaking orb? But he doesn't. At the end of Dragon Age Inquisition, in the fight with Corypheus, if you take Solace, Corypheus says, is this another ally? Another rat emerges from the garbage. So, does Corypheus know who he is? Does Corypheus recognize him? Or does he not? With what he's saying, with what he says, is this another ally? Another rat emerges from the garbage. That it could mean that he does know who he is. And he's just saying, oh, this rat just emerged. But if he did know who he was, I would suspect him to say something more. I would suspect him to just flat out give him away. Like saying, oh, look at who's fighting me now. You that started this. So I almost think that Corypheus doesn't recognize Solace in the final fight. I think Fen'Harel gave his orb to Corypheus in another form, maybe in a different form, and not as Solace, because he would have recognized him. I think he would have said more. I think Corypheus would have ratted him out. I think he would have just said, look who you're fighting with. This is the guy that started it all. But I mean, it could be seen the other way. It could be that Corypheus did recognize him. And that's why he's calling him a rat. And that's why he's saying, you emerged from the garbage. Like, I was smarter than you. And he says, another ally. So, I don't know. I don't know if Corypheus knew who he was or not. But, yeah, all very interesting stuff. So that's pretty much it. That's what I've been working on, this theory. And I find it extremely fascinating just reading about the creators and reading about Fen'Harel and everything, and just going through the Masked Empire. And then, of course, I mean, who wrote the Masked Empire? Patrick Weeks. Who wrote Solace? Patrick Weeks. Not saying that is a reason to think that Felasan is Solace, because it's the same writer, because, David Gator wrote Cole, and in Dragon Age Inquisition, Patrick Weeks wrote Cole. So I don't know, but I was like, it's very practical for the same writer to be writing Solace / Fen'Harel. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. I'm really curious to know what you guys think about this theory. I'm curious to know what your guys' interpretations are. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening to my crazy rantings. I am losing my voice, so I will talk to you guys later.